I am going to try to develop a program to hold our public servants accountable for their actions, their words, their deeds, their oaths of office, and their voting record. Because I don't think that they understand rightful liberty. And as you see on my slide, rightful liberty, according to Thomas Jefferson, is unobstructed action constrained only by the equal rights of others. In other words, we don't need a law to tell us we can't murder. We know that. We don't need a law to tell us we can't steal. We already know that as well. Thomas Jefferson went on to say that he didn't want to constrain his definition of rightful liberty as being within the limits of the law, because he knew that the law is often nothing more than the tyrant's will. And when it violates the rights of the people, it is always the tyrant's will. Now, we have some major problems in this country, and I'm not telling anybody in this room anything you don't know. But one of the problems that I think is a core problem is that our public servants say one thing on the campaign trail, and they proceed to get elected into office, and they do the exact opposite. Now, we all have gotten these glossy flyers in the mail with these beautiful pictures and these words, I'm going to fix Washington, I'm going to educate Lansing. And we read them and we roll our eyes and we throw them in the garbage, but we elect these people into office and they do the exact opposite. They make Washington grow, they learn from Lansing rather than educating Lansing, and they all become part of this machine that is stripping us of our rights. That's got to stop. We have the tools at our fingertips, quite frankly, that if we use them effectively, I think we can stop them. So what are some of the examples of the elected officials' words? Well, first of all, they take an oath to office. And the first part of that oath of office is, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, when you think about enemies to the Constitution, of course you can think about ISIS, Al-Qaeda, people that want to come over to our country to literally destroy our way of life. But the written word can also be an enemy of the Constitution. In the kind of legislation that is written on a consistent basis, that is unreadable, it's unmanageable, you can't understand it, you can't enforce it, there's so many volumes of laws that, quite frankly, we're all probably criminals because we don't know what the law is anymore. It's gotten that bad. And the last part of the oath of office typically is, so help me God. That's a powerful set of words. And an oath of office isn't exactly like something that you can rate on Conservative Review or Heritage Foundation's websites where they say, well, my representative holds allegiance to his oath of office 80% of the time. Well, your representative only holds allegiance to his oath of office 20% of the time. No, an oath of office is an all or nothing proposition. Either you hold your allegiance to your oath of office or you breach your oath of office. And if our public servants breach their oath of office, it is incumbent upon us, the people, to bend them into conformity by exposing their folly or remove them from office using the tools that we have at our fingertips. Thomas Edison said it nicely when he said, we shall have no better conditions in the future if we're satisfied with the conditions that we have at present. I'm not satisfied, and I don't think any of you are either, or you wouldn't be here today. So what do we have at present? There's been a lot of talk about the religious freedom and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. They call it RFRA. You know, big government people, they like acronyms, RFRA. So I took a look at religious freedom. The First Amendment in the Bill of Rights of the Constitution has 16 words. They say, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. 16 clear, simple, concise, manageable, understandable words. So what happened to that? Well, throughout history, there's been historical challenges to religious freedom versus the rule of law. So I've listed a number of cases that went before the Supreme Court. The first case was in 1878 called Reynolds versus the United States. This was a case where the Supreme Court ruled that a Mormon didn't have a right to practice polygamy. Now, I'm a monogamist. I like one man, one woman, marriage, happily ever after. I think that's a perfect union. But the fact remains that the Supreme Court had no business even hearing that case. What they should have done when the state came to try to adjudicate this act against these people is send it back to the state of Utah, where these people lived. This is a states' rights issue. The states and or the people have the right to set up the societal rules that they want to govern their state. The Supreme Court has no business getting involved in a case like this. So why did they do it? Because the people didn't stop them. Because the people didn't stop them. Again, why didn't the Supreme Court just say, wait a minute, there are 16 words in the Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's what they should have done. So then they went on, and you saw there were a number of different cases. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to jump up to 1963, when the Supreme Court ruled that the government had to show a compelling governmental interest when asked to adjudicate a case regarding religious liberty. Do you remember seeing compelling governmental interest in the Constitution? I don't. So where did they come up with this, and how did they get away with it? The people didn't stop them in 1963. I think they overstepped their constitutional boundaries. Then we march on in time, and all of a sudden we have Chuck Schumer in the House and Ted Kennedy in the Senate decide that they're going to create a Religious Freedom Restoration Act in 1993. Now, with a show of hands, how many people in this room think that Chuck Schumer or Ted Kennedy want to protect your religious rights? I don't see any hands. I'm pretty sure they don't. So I think that the entire RFRA Act was a stealth effort to diminish our religious rights. Let's take a look at that RFRA, the original RFRA in 1993, excuse me. It was House Resolution 1308. Section 2A3 says, Congress finds that governments should not substantially burden religious exercise without compelling justification. And then later on in Section 3B1, it says governments may substantially burden a person's exercise of religion if it furthers a compelling governmental interest. What happened to those 16 words? Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Why were they able to do this in 1993? Because the people didn't stop them. That's where we're at today. And I think that the time has passed for our public servants to be elected into office by good or bad means, only to ride off into high places left to their own devices. Because we know that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is very true. There is a seductive allure to power that none of us are immune to. Why not? You get elected into office, you get a title, you're called honorable, you're called representative, you're called senator, you sit at the best tables, you get fed first, you get the finest meals in the finest restaurants, you sometimes get an office, you get a good salary, you get a staff, and people clap when you walk into the room. Who wouldn't be enticed by that kind of treatment? So my program, Constituent Guidelines for Effective Constitutional Government, is just that. It's constituents, you and I, creating written guidelines to teach our public servants How to Govern Effectively Using Constitutional Principles. Now, I actually have written guidelines for our federal legislators. This is a project in progress, quite frankly. This is the first 6 months of its development. I'm working on strategies to expand my influence, my approach, my utilization of the tools. So it's, again, a work in progress right now. And I started out looking at my representative, David Trott, in the Federal House of Representatives. So that's another story, but I think this group tends to like to look at state issues. So I'm not going to go through all of the guidelines. If you want a copy of them, just contact me through my website, which is janicedaniels.com. It's a new website I'm building for this purpose of advancing this project. Other tools, YouTube clips, audio and video. In fact, as I say, we're recording this meeting this evening so that we can put it on television. I have a membership to a TV station in Troy called CMN TV, and this is their equipment. I send the material to them, they air it on their public access television station, and then we can use it in any other formats, YouTube clips, websites, email blasts, however we can expose the information to the public, we can then use it. We're free to use it. News talk radio. How many people call talk radio shows? See, that's not, you really should. That is a marvelous, wonderful tool that we have. And it's very simple to have a little script set up with your main point and then a couple of points after that, so that if they ask you questions, you're not left to thinking on the spot. You've got some information backed up so that you can use that. It's very important for all of us to use these tools that we have available to us. Press releases, letters to the editor. I think that, as we all know, the print media is more of a yesterday's media, but there's still a lot of people that will read these letters to the editor. So if that's your forte, please continue to do so. And if you would join a group like this, like my organization, we can coordinate and work together so that we're sending 5 or 6 emails on the same subject to various papers so that it gets potentially more exposure. I was told that if a paper receives 5 letters to the editor, that increases the chances by probably 3-4-fold that it will get, one of them at least will get published. So that's really important. Again, using the tools that we have had all along, but in a coordinated effort. Here's my website that I'm building. It's called the Non-Neutral Zone. I use a quote from Dante. He said that the darkest places in hell are reserved for those who remain neutral in the face of moral crisis. So this is the non-neutral zone because we refuse to remain neutral. So again, we can all build these professional websites. The 2012 Republican Party platform is a wonderful tool. It's a beautiful document. It's called We Believe in America. It has as a preamble, Jefferson's vision of a wise and frugal government must be restored. We agree. If we could just get the Republican public servants to follow the Republican platform of 2012, we would go a long way toward restoring our free market principles. A lady named Jennifer Hensley, she lives in, I think, Livingston County. She started a program called Platform Republican Caucus just about the time I started mine. So again, it's in her developmental stages. I'm not sure where she has taken it in these past few months, but it's a very good process that she's working on to hold our state legislators accountable to this platform. So what kind of other tools do we have? Well, we can always organize small groups of people to give presentations to patriot groups like we're doing here, executive committees, city councils, county commissioners, state legislators. And what I see in this line of organization is each group ought to be accountable to the group beneath them, or say the executive committee should hold the city councils accountable for their actions. The city councils should hold the county commissioners accountable for their actions. The county commissioners should be holding the state legislators accountable for their actions. And I haven't got it on this slide, but the state legislators should be holding the federal legislators accountable for their actions. I mentioned that to a couple of state representatives, and of course, at this point in time, they kind of just like withdrew and said, oh, well, maybe, but that's not the way it works. Well, I know it's not the way it works, but it's the way it should work. And it's the way that we, the people, ought to force it to work, because that's Republican government. That is the greatest force is at the grassroots level. That's you and me. We're the greatest force in this government. That's wonderful stuff, but we have to use it to our advantage to make our government work for us the way we want it to. We want to help our legislators feel the heat of being in the kitchen. That's why I have my kitchen tools on this slide. So it's a simple concept. Meet, research, report, but it's coordinated, it's systematic, and it's structured. So if you attend a town hall meeting, or you're lucky enough to get a meeting with your legislator, a small group meeting, it's very difficult to do, because once they find out that you're more educated than they are, they don't want to meet with you. They really don't.
You meet with Trot?
Pat and I met with Trot before he realized that we were creating a project. In fact, it was before we realized that we were creating a project. But he met with us in December. He promised to meet with us again. He promised that he would be accountable. He has not responded to how many emails? 15 emails, 10 calls, 3 meetings in person. He will not meet with us. I sent him a list of questions. He will not answer my questions. So I understand this is all new to all of us, and eventually they're going to understand if we use this process, if we use this project effectively, our public servants will understand that they have to meet with us. They have to. So when you go into your town hall meeting or your private meeting, you want to be armed with knowledge and a digital recorder.
Yep.
Michigan law makes it a crime to record the conversation. Michigan law makes it a crime to use any device to eavesdrop upon a conversation without the consent of all parties. That sounds like all-party consent law. But one Michigan appeals court ruled that the statutory term eavesdrop refers only to the overhearing or recording of the private conversation of others. However, the Michigan Supreme Court hasn't yet ruled on it. We have to be very brave if we're going to be doing this, because they could try to tell you that you can't, and then we have to tell them that we are fulfilling our obligation to our country. We're not eavesdropping. So when you go into your meeting and you announce that you have a recorder, you're going to have it turned down already anyway. So if they're going to complain about it, you're going to get that on the recording, and that could be some pretty interesting stuff to use too. Actually, the meeting that Pat and I were in with David Trott, he was very open. He said a lot of things, and I have them on the recording, and I have a transcript, and he has violated probably 75% of what he said he was going to do. But that's the program. Force them to see what they say, force them to face what they say, and then force them to do what they say. That's the bottom line. We want them to do what they say they're going to do. Because I don't know about you, but I'm real tired of seeing campaign literature where they're saying, I'm going to fix Washington, as David Trott did. And then he goes and signs every unreadable, unmanageable, unconstitutional piece of legislation that is put on his desk without nary a whimper. It's got to stop. So again, if you want a copy of these guidelines, I'll be happy to send them to you at just go to my website, janicedaniels.com, send me a contact, and I will get a copy into your hands. I want to go through a couple of the federal concepts or guidelines, because I think they're important to state level issues as well. One of them is demand immediate and complete FBI background checks on every public official in all 3 branches of government, as well as all of the department heads currently holding positions of state regulatory power. That's got to happen. We're in a constitutional crisis right now. Our government has gotten way out of control. We need to find out who's even holding these positions because we don't know. Read all bills in their entirety, or do not vote in favor of any bill that you have not personally read and fully understand. That almost seems elementary, but they do not read the bills. You know it, I know it. These bills are written so that they're unreadable, and they keep passing them anyway without knowing what kind of unconstitutional burdens they are placing upon the people. That has got to stop. It is a crime. It is a breach of an oath of office to vote for a bill that you have not read and do not completely understand. So that means that every single one of our elected officials are breaching their oath of office, without a doubt. So how is the state of Michigan? And how can we fix that? Well, what are some of the things that we would like to see? We want our roads fixed now. We want to eliminate wasteful spending. We want to eliminate crony capitalism. We want to eliminate unchecked fraud. Those are some of the big things that I would like my legislator to work on when he goes off to Lansing. Well, speaking of campaign promises, what did candidate Jim Tedder say he wanted to do if he was elected? Well, on his campaign literature, he said he wanted to educate Lansing. He wanted to lower taxes, fix roads, and improve education. What did newly elected Representative Jim Tedder do since going to Lansing? Well, one of the things that he did is he sponsored H.R. 17 to memorialize the President, Congress, and FCC to rescind ruling to regulate broadband internet services as common carrier services. Now that's a really nice thought. Sounds good. But what does it mean? Well, I looked up in the dictionary the word memorialize. It means to do or create something that causes people to remember. So he wants the President and Congress and FCC to remember that they should rescind laws that they just recently placed upon us. How likely do you think that's going to be? And if they remember it, what good does that do? What does it do? What does a resolution do? It's a formal expression of an opinion, will, or intent voted for by an official body or an assembled group. So it's an opinion that he wants the President and Congress to remember that they should rescind laws that they just placed. How likely is that going to happen? What does it say? Well, I have an excerpt from H.R. 17. It says, "Be it resolved that we urge Congress to continue efforts to pass legislation that would provide clear rules on internet protection in place of the FCC's new rules." So he wants to urge Congress to pass more legislation to provide clear rules on internet protection. What do we want? One of my excerpts from Constituent Guideline number 8, leave the internet alone. That's 4 words. Leave the internet alone. That's what we want. Is that what's happening in our legislature? When they're memorializing an opinion? We want to start demanding that our public servants stop wasting their time and our money on frivolous, meaningless, toothless resolutions. It's got to stop. I don't even know how they've gotten away with this so long.
Slowly.
Yeah, that's true, slowly, and while we were busy trusting that they were doing what they said they were going to do in their campaign promises. And they always do something that makes it look like it's so flowery. Oh yeah, we passed a resolution to stop the president from the internet laws. Okay, so he'll campaign next time. I made a resolution. What I want to see them do is pass a law that says something like, in accordance with the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, the state of Michigan does hereby assert its authority to demand that the United States federal government cease and desist the unconstitutional FCC ruling that purports to change the internet. Until such time, the state of Michigan will withhold any and all tax transfer payments to the federal government. Now there's a law. There's an action. That's something that could make a difference. And it's up to us to get our legislators to understand that this is what we want. This is what we need. I've been told that my project's a little bit too harsh. A lot of people have said to me, well, we need to have our legislators respect us. And I ask you, what has asking them to respect us gotten us for the past 150 years? It's where we are today, where we're crushed with regulations. The important thing is, I believe that Niccolo Machiavelli got it right when he said it's better to be feared than loved if you can't be both. Thomas Jefferson also said, when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. I wonder if Thomas Jefferson ever read Machiavelli. I'll bet he did. I'll bet he did, because those guys were smart and learned. So a little bit more recent in time, on March 21st, 2015, a nice young man named Patrick McGrady gave a presentation in Commerce Township from the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership. And he said, unless you are politically feared, you will not be respected. Now that's politically feared. I'm a pacifist. I'm one of those kind of people that if I see a bug on my wall, I'll try to put a glass over it and shove a piece of paper in there and then throw him out in my garden, knowing full well he's going to crawl back into my house, but if I don't see him, it's okay. I don't want to hurt anybody. But I want our group to be politically feared. We have to take back the reins of power that were given to us by our fathers and mothers. We have to. We don't have any choice. Mother Teresa said it really nicely when she said, we ourselves feel that what we're doing is just a drop in the ocean. But if the drop was not in the ocean, I think the ocean would be less because of the missing drop. Isn't that sweet? So what is missing? Demonstrable, angry voters. Courageous, constitutionally educated legislators. We have to work to get our legislators constitutionally educated, and they have to fear us enough to where they are going to do what they promise they're going to do, what they say they're going to do, and what is going to restore our liberty, not continue to destroy our liberty. I think that the program is good. I think it could work, but I need you to join me. I'm looking to organize working groups of leaders to develop this command and control action plan to expand this project. If you'd like to join, by all means, send me an email through my website, janicedaniels.com. And again, this is in the organizational stages. There are a lot of groups doing a lot of things to try to expose people's voting records, etc. And they're all good. Tea Party Patriots, Heritage Foundation, Conservative Review. There's a lot of different groups, and I've joined a lot of them. Ultimately, all they want is your money. This group is a group to where you and I are going to be taking the actions. We're going to be doing the work that needs to be done. Let's build this group in Oakland County even, to where we become a real force. You know, this is a great, wealthy county that we live in. We should be working together. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, you know, he was the famous Nazi resistor, said, we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. Please don't be one of the silent good people. Join me. My effort is simple again. If you can help, I think it can work. And that's my presentation. Thank you. Thank you.